Good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao, and I'm moderating I think it's the sixth Google Hangout session of our first ever um, our second annual, sorry guys, our second annual fall edition of the Read for Pixels campaign. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 12 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds towards the celebrity male role model Pixel Reveal campaign, which aims to raise $1 million to be shared between the USA's National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Pixel Project to keep their efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. We'll be telling you a little bit more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later in the session. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project and how to stop violence against women by visiting www.thepixelproject.net. We have a very, very special guest today. It's Rick Yancey, New York Times bestselling author of The Fifth Wave and the Monstrumologist series. And he'll be doing a reading followed by a live discussion with me, with the Pixel Project, and a Q&A session with you guys. And we see your questions now. And oh my God, hello, France! You guys are in the house, and I know it's in the middle of the night for you guys there. So thank you so much for staying up for Rick. And before we go over to Rick's reading, we just wanted, Rick's giving you a thumbs up. Before we go over to Rick's reading, we're going to tell you a little bit about what Rick's donated to the stash of author goodies that are available to grab on our Indiegogo fundraiser if you donate to us. And it's a grab bag stuffed full of Fifth Wave goodies. There's going to be a signed copy of the Fifth Wave, a signed bookmark to go with it, a Fifth Wave bracelet that says I am humanity, a signed two-sided poster featuring the book covers of the Fifth Wave and the Infinite Sea, and a special note, a note from one of the main characters in the Fifth Wave for your eyes only. And Rick will tell you a little bit more about that later, but I don't think we want to spoil the surprise. Sadly, this grab bag is just for donors in the US only. But just have a look at the Indiegogo page. I will show you a slide and to tell you where to go later. And please give generously. All funds go towards the Pixel Reveal campaign to help stop violence against women. My guys, sorry, my tongue's all twisted today. So excited about Rick. So now we'll go over to Rick, and Rick's gonna tell you what he's gonna be reading for us today. Hey, Rick.
Hey everyone, I'm Rick Yancey. I'm the author of the Fifth Wave series. I'm delighted to be here today to help out with the Pixel Project. Today I've decided to read from the Fifth Wave, the first book of the series. This is a scene that for people who have read the book probably know pretty well, and I think it illustrates all kinds of good things about family and what's important and strong female characters. This is told from Cassie's point of view. Just to set it up just a little bit, Cassie has found herself alone after a terrible alien invasion, 4 devastating waves of attack. She's alone. She's just been shot in the leg, and she is hiding from a sniper that she cannot see, who's there to finish her off. And this is obviously told by Cassie, and let's just go. Beneath the Buick, I slipped into a warm and dreamy twilight. My makeshift tourniquet had stopped most of the bleeding, but the wound throbbed with each slow beat of my heart. It's not so bad, I remember thinking. This whole dying thing, it isn't bad at all. And then I saw Sammy's face, pressed against the back window of the yellow school bus. He was smiling. He was happy. He felt safe surrounded by all those other kids. And besides, the soldiers were there now. The soldiers would protect him and take care of him and make sure everything was okay. It had been bugging me for weeks, keeping me up at night, hitting me when I least expected it, when I was reading or foraging or just lying in my little tent in the woods thinking about my life before the others came. What was the point? Why did they play that giant charade of soldiers arriving in the nick of time to save us? What was the point of all that, when they could have just dropped one of their blinky eyeballs from a drone and blown us all to kingdom come? On that cold autumn day, while I lay bleeding to death beneath the Buick, the answer hit me. Hit me harder than the bullet that had just torn through my leg. Sammy. They wanted Sammy, my little brother. No, not just him. They wanted all the kids. And to get the kids, they had to make us trust them. Make the humans trust us, get the kids, and then we blow them all to kingdom come. But children, billions of them had died in the first 3 waves. It wasn't like the others had a soft spot for kids. Why did the others take Sammy? I raised my head without thinking and whacked it against the Buick's undercarriage. I barely noticed. I didn't know if Sammy was alive. For all I knew, I was the last person on Earth. But I had made a promise. The cold asphalt scraping against my back, the warm sun on my cold feet, my numb fingers clawing at the door handle, using it to pull my sorry, self-pitying butt off the ground. I can't put any weight on my wounded leg. I lean against the car for a second, then push myself upright, on one leg, but upright. I might be wrong about them wanting to keep Sammy alive. I've been wrong about practically everything since their arrival. I still could be the last human being on Earth. I might be, no, I probably am, doomed. But if I'm it, the last of my kind, the last page of human history, like hell, I'm going to let the story end this way. I may be the last one, but I am the one still standing. I am the one turning to face the faceless hunter in the woods on an abandoned highway. I am the one not running, not staying, but facing. Because if I am the last one, then I am humanity. And if this is humanity's last war, then I am the battlefield. And then, of course, it all gets crazy, but I just love that scene. That was the first scene that ever occurred to me when I was thinking about this series was Yancey being trapped beneath that car.
Yeah, that is the catchphrase of the series, isn't it? It's "I am humanity."
Yes, "I am humanity" is pretty much the catchphrase.
Yeah, and basically through the series, the reader is starts, so we are kind of forced to think about what is it to be human, what makes a human, what makes us human.
Right.
The answers are pretty tough in a way.
Yes, they are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the series as more about us than about them. It was more important about what their arrival did to us than, exactly who they were and what planet they came from, and, what, even beyond what the ultimate goal was. Because it gets to a point in the story where it almost becomes a joke among the characters of what the goal is, because their goal is what really matters, which is, surviving and deciding for themselves, what's really important. That's what really appealed to me about the story was, when you strip everything away, all the things we take for granted, like, if I get hungry, I can go around the corner and get a sandwich. If I want to talk to a friend, I can get online or use my cell phone. What do you do when all that's gone? And what really matters? And that's, that's kind of the personal journey that not only Cassie goes through, but other characters in the story as well.
Yeah. Now it's sort of like it's interesting to read The Fifth Wave while reading The Monstrumologist, because in The Fifth Wave you can think of it as the monsters are inside us, but in The Monstrumologist you get the monsters right there chasing the protagonist and his crazy doctor master everywhere, and they're chasing them back. So basically, The Fifth Wave, sometimes I think of it as, thinking about the monsters that we can't see inside us, but we can still feel inside us. And how do we deal with that? And that kind of ties in with, how people deal with their violent impulses. How do they deal with that little voice that's telling them to do bad things, and why some people can deal with them better than others? and how we can't tell. It's like abusers. It's like domestic violence abusers and rapists and sexual assault, people who commit sexual assault. You look at someone and you really cannot tell if it's,
Right.
there's no mark on them saying I'm an abuser, I'm a rapist.
Right.
There is no mark. You cannot tell. So let's go to the questions. And for those of you who are watching right now, we will interweave your questions with the discussion that we're having with Rick. So be patient, but it we'll ask Rick all your questions. Rick is here to answer all your questions. And if you haven't left a question in the Q&A box that will be to the right of your screen, please do, because this is your chance. If you're not in the US, if you're not anywhere near where Rick's going to be in the future for book signings, please leave your questions. Rick will answer them, and we'll try and cover all of them before the end of the Google Hangout. So first question. Cassie is the very definition of a survivor. She's smart, she's resourceful, she's determined, and and she grits her teeth and she goes, I'm not gonna give in. I am gonna keep going, even if it's just me. So who was your inspiration for Cassie?
Oh, without question, it's my wife, Sandy. That's a wonderful description of her. It's funny. When the book first came out, I had a couple of questions like this, and I would always say, Cassie's not based on anyone in particular. I'm not, taking somebody I know and trying to turn it into a character. I never consciously try to do that, and that's still true of Cassie. But it wasn't until one evening I was having a discussion with my wife, and Sandy mentioned something, and she sounded so much like Cassie that it hit me like a thunderbolt. Of course, this is the soul of that character comes from my wife, who is also a survivor of domestic abuse. Your comment earlier about how abusers do not, have a sign on them or had a card saying, by the way, I happen to abuse women. And her abuser was a person I knew, and the only abuser I'm aware of I ever have come to face to face, but very charming person. And, Sandy's struggles and having to grit her teeth and get through some pretty horrific experiences was really, I mean, for me, the bravest person I've ever known in my life. Bravery that, that happens on a scale daily, as you know, that's truly inspiring, really inspiring. So yes, to answer the question quickly, Cassie is her character, her soul, her grit, her essence is based on my wife.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with survivors, that there is no sign on someone tattooed on your forehead saying, I am a survivor. Same as, there's no sign tattooed on the forehead saying I'm an abuser. And that's, and people who say that violence against women doesn't exist, or it's not as severe as the statistics make it out to be, which is 1 in 3 women and girls worldwide would have faced some form of domestic violence, sexual assault, rape, any form of gender-based violence in their lifetimes, at least once in their lifetimes. And a lot of people who say that, who disavow that, actually they don't know that they know people who they know women and girls who faced it, and it's a shame because when you say that I don't believe a rape victim, I don't believe someone who said that her husband hit her, you might be saying that within earshot of someone who's actually gone through it, and that person is not going to trust you anymore because they're thinking, well, I'm not going to ever tell that person that because they would never ever believe me. So it's the same thing in the fifth wave. How do you know who is who? How do you know who's the monster and who isn't the monster? And that scene in the beginning where Cassie shoots the wounded soldier because she cannot afford to let him go because she doesn't know if he is or is not one of them. That song illustrates it. That's very, very. It was a very hard choice. I was reading that and I thought, oh yeah, that is, she just couldn't afford to take the risk. She couldn't. So.
That's right. Those are the kind of stories I really love, because as a reader, you're like, what would I do in that situation? I think it's very simple for people who haven't experienced issues with domestic violence and abuse to sit back in judgment and think, well, why didn't they just leave, or why didn't they go get help, or why didn't they do this? I would have done this. But until you've actually lived in a situation like that, you got to walk in their shoes.
Yeah. So, do you think it's important for authors to include strong female characters in their novels? I mean, to consciously do it, or do you think sometimes a story doesn't need it, or do you think authors really should try to include more women in their stories?
Oh, wow. Well, as an author, I always believe that whatever fits not the concept that you're working with the best, whether it's male or female. Obviously, the cliche says you got to have two to tango. But I always wanted to write a story with a strong female lead. One of the simple reasons is I'd never done it. And as an author, you want to look for new ground, new challenges. You don't want to just write the same story over and over and over. So you want to try new things, to try to, get inside the head of the opposite sex, and live life or see things through another's eyes. That's one of the joys of writing, and certainly one of the joys of reading. I will never be a girl, but through the art of it, through the writing itself, I can experience some of those unique things that happen to girls and women, some of those unique challenges and those feelings that aren't necessarily. But I will also say this, the ultimate goal of writing is to share the human experience, whether it's male, female, victim, bad guy, whatever. You're trying to put your own take on what the human experience feels like to you personally, and a reader connects with that, or the reader doesn't. But that's one of the joys of the art.
Yeah. So apart from Cassie, has your wife's experiences and what she shared with you influenced how you portray relationships and female characters in your books and stories?
Well, I've been married for 20 years. All aspects of things that we've experienced, both as a couple and in our past, come to play. I'm not what you would call an autobiographical writer. I don't consciously ever try to, incorporate actual people. But like I said in the very first question, obviously things are going to influence me more than other things. And if I'm going to write a female character for the very first time, that's my the lead character, I'm going to draw on things that are going to be comfortable to me. And obviously, she's the one female I know better than any other female on earth. So I'm going to probably borrow a little bit from her character. Certainly, the whole concept of the series I also owe to her, because it arose from a conversation that we had about fear. Anyone who's read the series knows that there's a lot that goes on in the stories about fear. And I asked her one night, what is your greatest fear? And she told me aliens. And I'm like, that's not even in my top 50. I don't worry about it. But she explained to me why, which seemed very logical to me. And it really got me thinking about fear. And it wasn't aliens. And it wasn't long after that I had that image of a young woman ended up being underneath a car, but trapped someplace, unable to escape with someone hunting her down. And so that's how it started.
Okay, so let's go to one of the questions, because they are piling up. They are.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, you have someone from Chile. They're staying
Excellent.
up. They're staying up for you. This is cool. Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah. So we're gonna go. So guys, I just a public service announcement here. You can actually vote the questions up. So if you ask a similar question to someone else and you see that they've asked before you, you can totally vote it up, because we see +2s here and +1s, and you can just put then, give it a plus. And that's voting it up. You can vote it up so we can see it, and Rick can answer questions. If it's a pressing question, get people to vote yours up and we'll see it. But we'll try and get to everyone's. Okay, so Alex Gowler is the first one, and he's got 2 votes. I feel like a game show here. He's got 2 votes. And he's, Alex, I don't know if you're a girl or boy, but let's just say they have a question. Okay, will you ever consider writing a book from the past in the others from the fifth wave's point of view?
Oh gosh, you know, I started writing the fifth wave in 2012, so I've been with this book series for 3 years now. The 3rd book is coming out, called The Last Star, is coming out in the spring of 2016 after the movie's release. And where I go from there, I really don't know. You know, I always have like a million ideas in my head, and they're all like clamoring for attention, like little children, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. But certainly if another story related to the fifth wave universe occurs to me and won't let me go, then I'll probably end up writing it. So I won't say no more books about the fifth wave universe, but I can't say yes at this time. So.
Okay, so hope that answers the question, Alex. And Petite Lisa, or Petite Lisa, if my French, I can't speak French, so little Lisa, Petite Lisa says, could you come to France for a book signing with Zachary Arthur, Nick Robinson, and Flynn McHugh?
Would I do one?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff coming up. The details are still being worked out. I would love to do appearances with the cast and crew of the film, but none that I know of have been scheduled yet. We're still kind of far out. It's September. The movie comes out in February. So I'm sure there'll be a bunch of promotion and stuff going on leading up to the film and around that time period. I just don't have an answer to that yet, but I would love to do it.
Okay. Wow, they're all voting now. Okay, let's go to AJD. And AJD asks, will we read from a new point of view in The Last Star?
Will we read from a new point of view? Yes, we will. Do I have to say whose point of view?
Okay.
Yes, we will. Okay,
so you guys just have to wait for the book to come out to find out whose point of view it'll be from.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to the discussion. Guys, don't worry. We'll get to all your questions. Rick's here for the next hour. We're here for the next hour. We'll just weave in. For those of you who have just joined us, we're going to be weaving in your questions amongst our discussion about women and girls in Rick's books, women and girls in pop culture, and domestic violence and violence against women, and all sorts of stuff that we're chatting about today. So the next question is, you know, we're seeing what they call the Hermione effects now in pop culture and young adult books, with lots of capable and complex female protagonists of agency, like Cassie. And so 2 related questions to that. So question 1, what do you think about that trend? And do you think it is a trend, or do you think it's a bellwether for the fact that more women and girls are being seen and heard now in pop culture?
I think first of all, I think it's a great thing. It's like finally people are catching up to the what's the best way to put this? To the enormous amount of unexplored territory that exists in this kind of it's so refreshing to see this develop, because first of all, there's so many girl and young adult readers who are female who for years had to enjoy books without a lot of character that they could relate to. This is like me. This person goes through the same things I do. So I think it's a terrific development. I think it will continue. I think in this case, it's like uh, almost like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, like the tail wagging the dog. I think that because publishers see how explosively popular these stories are, these books are, particularly for young adults, you're going to see a lot more of them, which is great news. I mean, that's just a terrific thing. And I think it's about time, particularly, you know, we're not seeing female protagonists who are like wilting violets or damsels in distress who need to be rescued by the handsome prince. And this, you know, we're seeing this where, you know, Katniss and Triss and Cassie and these characters that, you know, don't need a guy to complete them. You know, they've got their own thing going. And I think that's just a terrific development, and it reflects reality, and it's about time.
Yeah, you know, they have their seeds. I mean, when I was growing up, I read Nancy Drew, I read Anne of Green Gables, and then after that, you know, and then when I was a little older, Dad put on Star Wars, and you know, we followed the adventures of Princess Leia. But why do you think? But there weren't that many. Like there weren't that many sort of female characters like that in the 80s and right up to the early 90s. That there weren't that many until Buffy came along in the late
Right.
90s, and then after that followed hot on the heels of Buffy was Hermione, because Buffy was, I think, was 1996, and then I think J.K. Rowling 18 years ago, what would that be? 1997, Harry Potter came out, and Hermione made a debut. So why do you think it started kind of exploding then in pop culture in the late 90s onwards? Why do you think it started?
Yeah, I think one of the things was it was so new but not new at the same time. I think it really struck a chord. I firmly believe that sometimes art drives culture, but a lot of times culture drives the art. And I think the roles of women were changing and evolving. It was sometime during that time period that women broke the 50% mark, you know, as being, you know, represented. At least 50% of the workforce were women. You know, I think the women, you know, women's empowerment drove it. Certainly, you know, almost across the board in every industry, the rise of women, if you will. That's not to pretend there still isn't glass ceilings. That's not to pretend there's still not, you know, gender bias. But it certainly is, you know, a reflection, I think, of what was going on in the culture as a whole. Was, you know, the rise of women just from, you know, the typical role, you know, stereotypical roles of wife and mother. So, and I actually, you know, I think it's absolutely fantastic, particularly for a selfish reason, because as a writer, it opens up so many more possibilities for you. I don't think, you know, bringing up the 90s, back then, I would have ever dreamed of having the I don't know, the creative wherewithal or even the courage to have a strong central female character in my work. I think people like J.K. Rowling and Susan Collins and Veronica Roth opened up those doors for writers like me, you know, to explore territory we never would have dreamed of going, you know, in the past. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and not forgetting Joss Whedon, who inverted the stereotype of, you know, the blonde cheerleader gets killed first in a horror movie to create Buffy, who is that little blonde girl who actually is the Slayer. And you know, he was making an observation. You know, he once said, you know, someone asked him about why he was still writing strong female characters, and he goes, you know, because you are still asking me that question. And he apparently still gets variations of that. So I don't think we're out of the woods yet. But
No.
like so many writers.
What about this person from popular culture, though, which is the first modern, you know, kind of character like this was Ripley from Alien. Then that was back in '79. I mean, you talk about the original kick-ass kind of character. I mean, Ripley was it, man.
Oh yeah, Sigourney Weaver was
Sigourney Weaver.
awesome. Yeah, she's imposing. She's like taller than most men. She's
Oh,
6 foot, and and the best part about it is I think I read somewhere that her character was originally supposed to be male, but
really?
I think she blew them away with the audition. I think I can't remember the specifics. I read some and I thought, huh, that's interesting. So
Wow, that's an even better story. That's cool.
they had to gender bend the original character and bring her in, and in doing so, she showed that women can play these characters, and it's not because of the gender bending. It's because some of us really are that tough. It's like
Right,
the latest news about how the first two women graduated from the Army Rangers. It's the first time
right.
they've allowed women to to apply and go in and train and try to graduate and make an attempt to graduate, and they did, and there were reports saying that they were even tougher than some of the men on the course. They I think one of them
That's,
carried one of the male cohorts, and
that's
and that is supreme. That kind of proves the point, that really drove home the point that male or female, you can do it. I mean, women generally are physically less imposing than men, but we have other skills to make up for it. Well, it's not making up for it. We have other skills that put us on equal footing with men.
right,
Uh,
right.
just because you're smaller than someone doesn't mean that you can't outwit them. Just because you're smaller than someone doesn't mean you can't outthink them. But yeah, it's Ripley's one, and I think she's also the precursor for the recent Mad Max movie Furiosa. Furiosa is also Furiosa is a
Yeah,
descendant of Ripley, I think. And what's interesting about that movie, I don't know if you know this, is that they brought in a consultant. They actually did their homework about violence against women, because it's all about forced marriage and reproduction, and that
wow.
their rallying cry is that the women's rallying cry is, because they're escaping from their captor, they who keep them for breeding purposes. Their rallying cry is, "We are not things." And so that I think is what pop culture is doing now. So that women are no longer the lampshade in the room, just there to show how a male character
Right,
is heroic, evil, or whatever, but they're actually taking in the driver's seat, literally. Like Cassie.
right,
Cassie makes the decisions. Cassie has a lot of hard decisions to make, and she makes them on her own, and that's
right.
great. Okay, so let's go over to more questions that are being voted out. Oh, okay. There's like 3 questions and 3 votes. So AJD says, "Hi Rick, I am a big fan, and many of the people I've met on my Fifth Wave fan account at the 69th Wave, yes, you've read that right, are also huge supporters of your novels." A smiley face. My question is, my question is, what advice would you give to an aspiring writer? Can't wait to read The Last Star.
Oh, I get this question a lot, and it's a really good question. And when I was an aspiring writer, I used to I used to write authors that I really admired and ask them that same question. Not a single one answered me ever. That's sad. Um, I guess they were busy. But I think part of it is this too. It's so hard to give, that kind of generic advice, that kind of universal wisdom that, is going to open up a door for someone. Writing is very unique in that it's very personal. Any little tricks that I have for 99% of other writers, they won't work at all. And their little tricks aren't going to work for me. I do tell aspiring writers, yes, you have to find your own way. Find what works for you. And sometimes that takes a very long time. Sometimes that takes years. It took me years to find the best way for me, to create something, new and unique and that represented my own unique voice. So look for your own voice. It's just like when you're a little kid, how we learn to speak and do most things as humans is by imitation. We copy the way the words our parents are saying. We walk and learn to talk and eat and all those things that humans do by imitation and watching others and copying them. The same is true of higher functions like writing. My first work was very, imitative and derivative and copying other writers, not consciously trying to plagiarize them, but, things I admired in other writers, I would try to emulate. I would try to do on my own, what they were doing until I learned my own voice. So that's the first advice I give is read a lot. Find writers that you really love and don't pay attention to whether other people like them or not. Don't pay attention if they're popular writers or not. If that writer speaks to you, then you need to read them and ask yourself, what about this writing really excites me? Why do I love this writer so much? What is it that they do that really makes me excited about writing? And if you can get the answers to those questions, you're well on your way to becoming a writer yourself.
Yeah. And we have one of the authors who worked with us on Read for Pixels, who worked with us and who still supports us, is Chuck Wendick, AJD. And he has a blog at terribleminds.com. You might want to go to terribleminds.com. And his blog is just full of stuff about the writing craft. And it's there, it's a huge archive of hints and tips and advice and other writers weighing in the comments. People actually talk about stuff like this in his comments. And loads of people with their tips and tricks, and you'll find people describing their writing style, and maybe if you find someone whose writing style mirrors your own, read what they have to say. And also, I think, Rick, you'll probably agree with this. Chuck has one golden rule when writers ask him about what advice he would give to writers. It would be, and he uses a bad word, well, cuss word. I won't use it. It's basically finish what you started. Don't leave, finish what you started. Too many half-written short stories, unfinished novels in people's drawers, and files on your computer. Just finish what you started. And okay, right. So let's. Yeah, finish what you started, or you'll never get there. Basically, that's his observation. Okay, so let's go to Petite Lisa, and she says, "Oh, this is about Ben Parrish." She says, "Is Sissy Ben's sister alive?"
Oh gosh. Okay, here's another cool thing about about writers and readers. We share a dream together. It's unique in the arts in that it's a very personal thing. It's between me and a single individual holding my book. And we create this universe together. If I was going to just hand my universe to you on a plate, then every single answer that pops up in that universe, I would answer. But then my book would be 10,000 pages long, or maybe even longer. Questions like these, and I get these questions, I sound kind of like a jerk, I guess, when I say, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think she's alive? Because it's a shared vision that we have. It's a dream that, that doesn't solely belong to me. I remember when I first started publishing books, readers would ask me questions like this, and I would try to say like, well, yes, this is what happens, or yeah, I didn't write about this, but I feel like, and then I realized, no, we're sharing something together. So maybe in my world, Sissy is still alive, but if it works better for you that she did not make it, then she didn't make it. So that's, to answer every single question that crops up in a novel, especially a long one like The Fifth Wave, would be impossible. So I like to, and I don't think I'm cheating, reader. I'm just saying, in this story, that question, I, as the author, I never offer you an answer. Certainly Ben has come to terms with the fact, in a certain sense, that she didn't make it. Or he would, move heaven and earth to try to find her and find out what happened to her, and he doesn't. So Ben's mind is pretty much made up on the issue.
Okay. And we'll do one more audience question before going back to our discussion about pop culture. This is from Lisa Queen, and she says, "Hi from France. I wanted to know why you use the terms waves and not steps, for example, for your story.
Well, waves it kind of brings up an image first, which I love working with interesting imagery as a writer. Steps would work. Sometimes not all the characters talk about waves. They talk about attacks or the invasion. I just thought it sounded kind of cool to call it, waves, because particularly in the second book, I talk about different ways you could describe the situation, and a lot of characters use the phrase, it's like an infinite sea. I mean, there wasn't a conscious decision like, okay, I can call it steps or waves. Once Cassie started narrating the story for me, she used waves, and I just kind of followed her lead.
Okay, so okay, guys, public service announcement again. If you've got lots of questions for Rick, just post them here. Just if you're watching this from Google Plus, you'll see a Q&A box to your right of your screen in a pop-out sidebar, and please just keep leaving your questions here. Rick will get to them. We'll try and get to all of them. This is your chance to ask Rick questions. We're still here for about another 50 minutes. Just keep going, and if you see a question that you want answered, just keep loading it up, and we'll get to it. Just keep going, and thank you for watching us today. So back to Rick. We were talking about Ripley, and we were talking about Furiosa, and we were talking about Hermione. So it's all geek culture. Geek culture is exploding right now. It's no longer on the fringe. It's pretty mainstream. But geek culture in general, including science fiction and fantasy, has had its share of critics saying that it's still too male-dominated, despite a rising number of prominent and well-respected and well-known female authors. So what do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's books or comics or gaming, more welcoming for women and girls?
Wow, these are really tough. I don't know if I'm an expert on that kind of question. Personally, I think we just keep doing what we're doing. I think, authors who are interested, in female characters, particularly in this whole, it's almost a genre of its own now, isn't it? The strong female character fighting impossible odds. If that's the thing that gets to you, then by all means, you need to do it. I do agree, yeah. Geek culture has sort of, particularly in Hollywood, when you look at it, how many superhero movies are they going to make? I asked my youngest son, who's about to turn 19, but I asked him a couple years ago, I said, are they ever going to, why all the superhero movies? Are they ever going to, when is this trend going to just burn itself out? And he looked at me and he said, never. So I guess, never is never. But I think it's kind of cool. I was, when I was a teenager, I was what you would call a geek. I was full out geek. I loved Star Trek. When Star Wars hit, I was all in. It was just my kind of thing. I loved science fiction when I was growing up. I loved fantasy. I was a huge Tolkien fan. I even loved George R.R. Martin before he was George R.R. Martin. Before Game of Thrones came along, he'd been writing for years. I was always a big fan from, until I was in my 20s. So, I went to my first Comic-Con a couple years ago, and wow. It has changed over the years, the whole geek thing. But I did notice even at Comic-Con, it was I would say the majority were males. The majority of the people at Comic-Con were men or guys. But there were quite a few females there too who were into it. I definitely think that, now that pop culture has recognized the draw, and it all comes down to money, doesn't it, Regina? It doesn't always come down to money.
Yeah, it comes down to money. But it's kind of weird, because the Avengers, there have been people talking about why is there only one female Avenger? That was the Black Widow. And then after that, they added a new one, the Scarlet Witch. And then there was a big hoo-ha. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. There was a big hoo-ha, including Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk. how can, there was a big hoo-ha about why do all the male characters get their action figures, but for the life of me, I can't find a Black Widow action figure, I can't find a Scarlet Witch action figure, and people were going, that's not fair, we want it. And some boys, teen boys and middle school boys actually also said, some parents have reported them saying, well, my set isn't complete. Why is there no merchandise with Black Widow on it? No merchandise is
Wow.
but it's still going on. And Mark Ruffalo, who's a dad of 3 girls, I think they're middle school and high school. They're still in school, and basically he weighed in and said, yeah, Marvel, where's all this stuff? Where's all the good stuff? The Black Widow stuff. She's kick ass, and he's a big fan of it. And they had no answer.
Right.
They couldn't answer.
You're to the tail wagging the dog thing. I mean, did we get trapped in the stereotypical, boxing in of girls by, creating, Barbies? This is the kind of thing you guys need to play with, and the boys will get the action figures. Like, even look at what we call them, action figures. And when you think of action figures, you think of male. It's like almost a male-dominated term. So I don't know which came first. Was it breaking through those barriers and stereotypes that changed all that, or was it the culture itself that drove popular culture to do that? But I'm just all for it. I think it's terrific.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, when you think about it, action figures are dolls.
Yes, they're dolls for boys. That's how they were, looked at. I remember my sister used to come and borrow my G.I. Joe dolls because, she wanted to use her Barbies to go on a mission with G.I. Joe. Not to like date him, but they were going to go on a mission. So I guess, my sister was an early precursor of this whole movement, but, because, what does Kim know?
That's cool that she wanted Barbie to go on missions. Like, I mean, there's this whole conversation about gendered toys and how it was a big deal that Target no longer had an aisle for girl toys and an aisle for boy toys. And this gendering of toys has been going on for a long time. I mean, I remember my dad telling me, I'm not gonna give you tops and marbles because you're a girl. Here, have a Barbie. Right. But my Barbie was always a career woman. She was always getting in a car and going to work and wearing work clothes and going on adventures and she was never at home cooking. Never,
Good for you, Barbie.
Yeah. Career girl Barbie, and your sister's Barbie was G.I. Joe Barbie, going on dangerous missions to save the world.
She was one of those Army Rangers,
Yeah. So let's go to more questions. And let's take one from Isabella Al. Her name's Isabella Al. That's Isabella. That is a really cool name. If it's a handle, that is cool. Isabella Al. If that's your real name, that's also really cool. So she says, how did you know you wanted to be a writer?
Wow, I think I started writing without setting a word down as a little kid when I would act everything out. I was a little ham, I guess. I turned my whole bedroom into a space station. All kids play act, I know that, but mine got very, very intricate. I mean, to the point where me and my friends were writing scripts and acting out all the parts. And then when I got into middle school, I really got interested in writing, and it all flowed from the reading, all flowed from me being a voracious reader, just read all the time. And it started to get to the point where, it was like, these human beings have a way to transport me to a whole nother world or universe. And I want to be able to do that. I want that kind of power. I want to be able to create something and have someone read it and feel those same powerful emotions that I felt reading those things. And I got a lot of encouragement early on from teachers and from my parents to focus on what I was passionate about, which was writing at the time. And I started out like a lot of writers. I wrote the kind of things that I love to read. And by writing, I taught myself, what works, what doesn't work. And I had a lot of great mentors along the way. There tends to be still a commonly held stereotype about writers that we work totally in private, that it's us and our imagination and our computers or our tablets or our typewriters, and it's not like that at all. It takes a whole team for a writer to be successful. It takes those people that love and support them when, everyone else is telling them no. It takes people who give them honest feedback about their work, who gives them great advice about changing and growing as a writer. And then it takes those people that help the writer get published and get out in the marketplace and spread the word. And it comes down to readers too, like the person who asked the question. People who read a writer and let them know, your words changed me, your words moved me, you had, I loved what you did. And those kind of things, build that community that's inside a writer's head when they sit down to write their next book or do their next project.
Yeah, did you see the Indiegogo video that we put together? We sent a link to Elise, and it's on the top of the Indiegogo page. And we started the video with a quote from Helen Exley, which says, books are dangerous. They might change your life.
Exactly. They certainly changed mine.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question from AJD, which has 4 votes. So it's right at the top of the page. Have you ever, AJD says, have you ever considered putting a character named Green into one of your novels? I'm writing a companion novel on Wattpad for the 5th Wave called The Lost Sky, which focuses on Ringer's original squad, and one of the protagonists' nickname is Green.
Wow. I had never thought of that, but maybe the person who asked the question ought to write that. That sounds like really good fan fiction. So get on it. Start writing.
AJD says I don't know if it's a guy or girl, but they said that they are writing a companion novel on Wattpad now. So maybe they could tweet the link to you, Rick.
Oh, that's fine. I'd love to read it. I like reading fan fiction.
Yeah. So AJD, go tweet that link to your story to Rick, so Rick can have a look. So next question, Josie Reese. She's upvoted 3 times, and she says, do you ever look at the fan accounts of your book on Instagram? What do you think of them? Oh,
I do look at them. I've been really busy the last month. I'm moving as well as finishing up the very final stuff on The Last Star. So I haven't had a chance in a few weeks to look at all of it. I think it's so, I don't know how, you guys are great the way you can manipulate and do these things online that I just have no talent with it. I guess I'm old. I just don't get it. But they are cool. They are cool. So yes, I do look at it.
Okay. So let's go back to our discussion. And guys, don't worry, we'll get to your questions as they come out, and we'll try and get to all of them in the next half hour. Okay, so one of the most important things that anti-violence against women activists and advocates do, and the entire movement does really, is being focused on changing cultural mindsets by working on ensuring that the next generation grows up more egalitarian and less violent than the previous, and less sexist than the previous generations. So as a dad, because you have 3 sons, and oh, we noticed that I think one of your sons, Jake, retweeted stuff from us. Is it Jake?
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
yes, he did.
Is he your youngest? Is Jake your youngest? Yeah.
He's my youngest.
Okay, so as a dad, how do you role model to your 3 sons?
Oh gosh, that is a scary part about being not only a dad, but a parent in general is the role modeling. A lot of times you don't realize that you're modeling, and I think that's, part of the reason some bad things get passed along. I have always tried to model and teach my sons, that people are people, And it doesn't matter what gender you are, all people deserve the same amount of respect and deserve the same amount of compassion and regard. And simply because that you're a female doesn't mean that you're less of a person, or that you have a certain role that you know that's demanded of you that you be in life. Um, I and I think the primary thing though is, you know, it's one of those obvious truths that probably should be said again, that a young male's first exposure to a male-female relationship and how that looks is obviously between their parents. Whether their parents are divorced or together, that really doesn't matter, because they are the primary people in their lives, primary adults. And maybe especially if it's a divorce situation, you better be careful how you're treating each other, because your sons are watching. And you may not think you're having an effect, but you are having an effect. Um, I'm not a perfect person, you know, and I don't ever tell my sons that I'm a perfect person. I think you set yourself up for disaster if you say, I'm perfect, so do what I do. But I've always, you know, endeavored to show all human beings respect.
Mm-hmm. So, how do you think dads can help raise the next generation of boys and men to be respectful of women and girls?
I think that, you know, it can go, it can and should go beyond, you know, simply with your own behavior. I think you actually do have to speak up. I think that is a very sobering thing, what you mentioned near the beginning of the discussion, about 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence or abuse, or something along those lines in their lifetime. I think you're not silent about it. I think if you have personal experience in it, you should own it and talk about it with your sons or all your children. And especially if you've had, I guess, secondhand experience the way that I have had. You know, like I said at the beginning, my wife is a survivor of domestic abuse, and with all 3 of our sons, we didn't try to hide that fact. It has been, you know, a thing that we deal with still today, and they're all grown up. I mean, the oldest, he's 30, and my middle son is 26 now, about to turn 26, and my youngest is about to turn 19. And it's still something we talk about, even though this is, you know, events that happened, you know, 20 plus years ago. I think that's one of the things that, you know, is important to understand for people who aren't familiar with this, is that no, you don't always stay a victim. Um, you don't have perpetual victimhood, but you can move from victim to survivor. And that means moving past the fear and the stigma of being able to talk about it openly, especially with, you know, your own family. It should be able to be talked about, because if you don't, you'll never move past it. You'll never, you know, cross that line from victim to survivor. And that's one of the things that's so inspiring to me about my wife, is she has crossed that threshold. Is every day simple for her and easy? No, because to look at her, you would think this is someone who would never tolerate such a situation. You know, she seems so strong and capable and accomplished, and you would think that could never happen to someone like her. But it did happen to someone like her. And I think that's something that, you know, you don't deal with in silence. Silence is not the way to handle it. And that's the way I try to handle it, and have tried to handle it with my sons.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and it's really it's not a woman's problem. In inverted commas, it's not a woman's
Exactly.
problem. It's everyone's problem. And because, you know, yeah, I'm gonna quote this figure correctly this time, because we're so excited during Jonathan Mayberry's Google Hangout that we quoted it slightly wrongly. We moved the decimal. Oh my God. There was a report that showed, and I think they did a long-term study, and they showed that domestic, even just domestic violence against women and children, cost the global economy $9.5 trillion a year.
Wow.
That's lost
Wow.
time. That's lost work time. That's lost productivity.
Wow.
That's lost economic power for women. That is lost everything. that's health, that's public health, that's the
Wow, that's
economy,
stunning.
that's lost talent, lost lives. The worst thing about it is the lost lives. How many people die from domestic violence
Wow.
and abuse? Children and women, and in many cases, the pets get maimed and as part of the abuse. And trillion, I mean, that's a million every year. 9.5 trillion. I got it right. Let me check. This should be correct. We've been as an organization where we are almost 7 years old. We'll be 7 years old in January 2016. And when we found out that report last year, when we read about that, our jaws just dropped. It was like, how much more
Wow.
work? What? And this is taking into account everybody. I mean, in the U.S. alone,
Wow.
I would think it would run into millions, but let me check. It is, yeah. It is. Domestic violence costs $9.5 trillion each year in economic loss. And globally, 769 million women are the victims of domestic violence at some point in their lives.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like Jonathan Mayberry said, and we talked a lot about this on Friday with him on September 11th during his session, is that what social media does, and the Pixel Project was born with social media. We were born in social media. We wouldn't exist without it. Is that it gives survivors a platform to talk about their stories, to not stay silent anymore. It gives activists and advocates multiple platforms to push the message forward. So, silence doesn't help, and we have to
Oh,
remove
it
the stigma.
thrives. Yeah, it thrives in silence. That's where it thrives. It thrives in the dark and in silence, and with people not speaking up, and people who even are aware of it in the periphery and don't do anything about it. Even if it's happening or they suspect it's happening with a loved one, you need to speak up. You need to do something. You need to take action.
Yeah, and if all of you who are listening here, all of you who are watching this, and all of you who will watch this recording after this, if you are not sure where to go and get help, please follow us on Pixel Project on Twitter every night between 8 p.m. EST and 12 midnight. EST is New York time, between 8 p.m. EST and midnight. For 4 hours, we tweet helplines for domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, and human trafficking from over 30 countries, everywhere from the US to South Africa. So if you need help, if you don't know where to get help, if you can Google for it, or you can follow us if you're on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter, and you'll see the numbers, and you'll see the website. For some of them we have numbers, for others we have websites. However you want to reach out. We have helplines for Nepal. We have helplines for Indonesia. It's not run by us, but it's run by all these people working on the ground in their own countries, helping to stop it, helping women and children and girls get out of it. So follow us there. If you're in trouble now, follow us there. If you can't find your country among them, tweet at us or drop us an email at info@thepixelproject.net, and we'll see what we can do. Now let's go to the questions, because there are lots of upvotes. Josie Reese, let's turn to the movie. So Josie Reese asked, how did you find out Sony wanted to turn your book into a movie, and what was your reaction?
I couldn't believe it. What happened is that I had written about 150 pages of the novel, of the first book, The Fifth Wave, and it sold to a publisher. And my agent sent it to Sony Pictures, among other producers, and they bought the project before the book was even finished. Not to add any pressure to Rick Yancey, but Then the novel was finished, and they gave it to a screenwriter, Susanna Grant, and they, took it from there. I mean, it happened very quickly, almost scarily quickly by Hollywood standards. It was very, very fast.
Yeah. And, I hope it'll be like the Hunger Games, because the adaptation of the Hunger Games actually really, really closely to the book. They actually managed to do that. I was amazed, and I hope that for the fifth wave, the same thing happens, because there's nothing like going to cinema and knowing that you will not be disappointed.
Yes, exactly. Well, I have told fans over and over, I have not seen the completed film yet, like a lot of people, most people. I have not seen the movie. But what I have seen on the script and on the scenes that I've actually seen that they filmed, very, very close to the book. And when it isn't exactly like the book, it's very, very much in the spirit of the book. Obviously you can't take a 500-page book and turn it into a 2-hour movie, because then it wouldn't be a 2-hour movie. It'd be about a 6-hour movie. So I do not think that fans of the book will be disappointed. And I can say that honestly. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed.
Okay. And the next movie question is also from Josie, and she says, how often were you on the set of the movie?
I was there about 60% of the time. I was working on a book at the time. I was working on the last book of the series, so I couldn't get there every day. And plus it was really cold. And a lot of the movie is filmed outside, and I don't do well in the cold. So, I mean, that's the actor's job to freeze. I'm the writer. I can sit in warm study, but about 60% of the time. And it was really, the very first time that I was on the set, I tell you guys, it was a very surreal experience, because it has never happened to me where something I wrote, all these people are around making it come to life. It was very surreal and obviously pretty cool at the same time.
Okay, so we'll take one more question from the audience before going back to the discussion, and it's from Crafting Chaos, 2 Ks, Crafting K with a K and Chaos with a K, and she says, so my name is Cassie. It's like Cassie with a K. After reading The Fifth Wave and The Infinite Sea many times over, what advice would you give for the people who want to be as courageous as Cassie, Sammy, and other characters in the book?
Wow. Well, first you have to live through an alien invasion. Step 1. What I always love about these kind of stories, I'll be serious for a minute, is seeing ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Cassie and Ben and Sammy, they're not any braver than the average person, I don't think. What they are is they found what they love. They each have a different answer for that question. What's important to them? And if it's something really important to you, you are going to fight for it, aren't you? If it really matters to you, you're going to fight like heck for it, and you're going to do whatever it takes. And that's why I admired, all my characters in this story, is that they have decided, I'm going to do whatever it takes, because to not do that is to basically sign off. I'm done. My life's over. So they choose to live. They choose to, like Cassie said in the book, they choose to get up. Instead of staying down, they choose to get up.
Yeah. And with people who face domestic violence, women who face domestic violence and rape and all that, every day is a choice. I think Sandy, your wife, would know that. Every day I choose to get up, I choose to face the day, and I choose to battle on. I choose to not say I'm gonna die. I choose to not give in. I choose to continue living, and living is hard. Living can be so hard.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you say that, because she has said the same thing, almost word for word. It is something she says, I choose to do this. There is that choice that you have to make every day. It's not something that, well, it's one of my favorite writers, William Faulkner once wrote, the past isn't the past. It's the past isn't death. It's not even the past. These kind of things is something that you have to face on a daily basis. And sometimes it is a struggle. The struggle, happens You know, memories can be brought back by a look. Memories can be brought back by a smell or a setting. Everyone, whether you're a victim of domestic violence or from that particular situation, you know, our memories live with us every day. And it can take, you know, anything that you know, sparks that memory, brings that back as if you're reliving it all over again. We've all experienced that.
Yeah. So, okay, so we'll take another question before we go back to the final questions of our discussion, and we'll try and wrap up on time because Google Hangout will cut us off whether or not we finish.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there is a little quirk of the system, and it'll cut us off whether or not, you know,
It's about bandwidth, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Petite Lisa says, I love pound cake so much. How was Najee as pound cake on set?
Okay, I'll be honest. I never saw Najee. I saw Najee do one scene as Pound Cake, where he's just sitting there eating something. So I didn't really get to see his work yet. I'm really looking forward to it. I thought it was really cool casting. He's really a good actor, is what I hear. So I'm very excited to see his work. And I think we met one time. So it'd be cool to see him again when the premiere happens to talk to him. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay. So, so back to the discussion. So, you know, how do you think influential authors like yourself, who read all over the world, can sort of present themes like violence against women in your books and stories in a thoughtful way, that in a way that makes your readers think, but without, and you know, and sort of working the themes of respecting women as equals and as human beings without being too heavy-handed or preachy?
Right, that's a great question. That is a great question. I'll illustrate my answer will be illustrated by a little story. When this opportunity came up, which thank you guys very much for inviting me to do this. I think this is just wonderful. I just bless you, bless you. I said, "Oh, Sandy, they want me to read something from the Fifth Wave that either touches on domestic violence or the tough choices females have to make in life." And I said, "I don't know what to read from the book. I've been thinking and thinking." And immediately Sandy said, "Oh no, you need to read this section," because she knew immediately what you guys were looking for, what this was all about. Obviously she knows a little, because she's firsthand experienced this kind of thing. So, but she knew immediately, and it was perfect. It was the scene that I read at the beginning of all this with Cassie. It's very tough, you don't like reading something that's a soapbox. One of my, my expertise, a book that doesn't have to be on a soapbox but gets a message across in spades is To Kill a Mockingbird. A message of tolerance, a message of love, a message of the great racial tensions in our country, told in such a way that isn't preachy, that is deeply moving, and a story about real human beings. And I think that's the best thing that authors can do. Our strong suit is writing stories that move other people about, maybe not the reality of a situation in terms of, it can be set in fantasy or science fiction, but at least the reality of what it is to be human and to have those universal struggles. And if we're honest with our art and honest with how we present people, then messages like that will shine through without us having to get on a soapbox and wag our fingers at people and say, people who think this way or act this way are totally wrong. Readers get that without you having to get on a soapbox and preach about it.
Yeah. So, you and Sandy have been so incredibly supportive of the Read for Pixels campaign and the Pixel Project's anti-violence against women work as a whole. So we were wondering, why do you and Sandy support us in particular? There's so many organizations out there working to end violence against women because it takes all of us. So, we were wondering why you and Sandy support us in particular.
I think it was Sandy that discovered you guys and really, brought you to my attention. She follows several social media accounts, of these sorts of organizations, and really just fell in love with yours. I mean, she kind of led me to that. I do believe that, adding your light to the sum of light is the answer to so many things. There's only so much that one of us can do in life, really. I mean, we're just one person. But one of the great things about the modern age and social media is the power of one. That, using social media and going across multiple platforms is you will find people who will listen to you. That cuts both ways. There's a lot of nuts out there. There's a lot of crazy people and a lot of haters who use social media and use the internet to spread hate, just to encourage the worst in all of us. But call me an optimist or whatever, but I do believe that most people are good. Most people, want to do the right thing. Most people find this issue in particular just totally aberrant, just totally horrific, just totally unacceptable. And if we learn to speak up and add our light to the sum of light and support organizations like yours, we can make a difference. It doesn't have to be a $1 trillion problem. It doesn't have to be, a world where, 1 in 3 women are going to experience this sort of terrible thing in their lifetime. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think, if we all do our part to add that light to the sum of light, we will make a change. We will.
Yeah, and it's something that was discussed 2 days ago. Jonathan Mayberry was, we acknowledge that culture plays a huge role in perpetuating violence against women because we're all swimming in cultural soup. We're brought up, we're all steeped in culture. Our families, we're all in a communities. Each community has its own microculture, but we have the wider culture that condones rape, condones domestic violence, doesn't speak up enough. It all ties in together. But an interesting thing that Jonathan Mayberry brought up was choice. No matter where you come from, everyone has their own burden to bear. Everyone has their own oppressions and all, but you can still make a choice to say, stop, I won't be violent like my dad, or stop, I will speak up. I will not stand by in silence. And it's very hard to make that choice sometimes because culture says, we're going to ridicule you, we're going to tamp you down for speaking out, we're going to, or you will never get out of the cycle. But there's always human choice, and many people make choices under like Cassie makes these choices under the most difficult.
I think that's why Sandy chose that passage, because Sandy realized this is about a woman or a young woman who has to make a very difficult choice. Do I just give up and bleed to death, or do I get up? Do I get up and face that thing that I thought I couldn't face? And I think that's why that passage really spoke to her, and why she thought, this is the one you should read for this project.
Yeah, and we recognize that not everyone has choice. I mean, many women worldwide are in situations where they have no choice. They're sold into marriage, they're sold into prostitution, forced prostitution, they're sold into slavery, or they are in a situation where they cannot get out of a domestic violence situation because they're prevented from having a job, they don't have any resources. But in many cases for men, they do have those resources, and the men who are standing by and the men who grew up in abusive households can have the choice because they still have many more advantages over given to them by society just for being male. They have the choice to say, stop, I will not be abusive, stop, I'm going to break this cycle. I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna tell my male peers that is wrong. You shouldn't, you shouldn't harass women on the street. You shouldn't be beating your wife. They can step up, and that's why part of the Pixel Project's mantra is it's time to stop violence against women together, and we mean that together thing. That's why we put that in itself. It's not part of the first sentence. It's by itself. Because we have to do this as a community, and that means men need to get on board too. And so before we go to the final question in our discussion, let's go to all these questions that are piling up. So AJD has 5 votes for this, and they said, are Raisin and Teacup alive? If Raisin is alive, I bet he has a POV. Is that going to be the same answer you gave to the other question?
The definitive answer about the fate of those two characters does happen in The Last Star, and that's all I can say.
Okay. Well, they're piling up. They know we only have like 10 minutes left. Actually, you have only 5 minutes to answer the rest of these. Okay,
Oh,
there are
rapid
some
fire.
funny questions here. Yeah. So Josie reads, this is hilarious. Josie says, our class is currently watching Finding Nemo. What do you think the fifth wave would have been like if they were fish instead of aliens? Haha.
Well, I'm sure the fish would be happy. After the second wave, most of the landmass is underwater, so the fish would probably be delighted with the whole situation.
Okay.
Moving on.
So quite a few people asked about this. Says Isabella Al says, how do you find inspiration while writing stroke outlining?
Oh wow! I always approach the question of inspiration very carefully because you start to wonder about that or make yourself be inspired, and you're going to end up in a world of hurt because you'll never be inspired. I always say, it's the idea that you can't stop thinking about is the one you should be working on. Whether it's, there's the idea you think you should be working on, and then there's the idea that just keeps nagging at you that you can't stop thinking about. So that's the one you should be working on.
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay. So Crafting Chaos has another question. She says, do your characters in the fifth wave embody people in your life? Are they modeled after certain people that you know and or care about? If so, who? So we know that Cassie is subconsciously modeled after Sandy, your wife. Are any of the guys like Ben, like Ben and Evan, are they modeled after your sons?
No, except in the second book, there's a character named Razor who halfway through writing his story, I realized that I was modeling after my youngest son, Jake. And so then I just went with it. So I even described him physically as the way, Jake looks. So and I told Jake, I said, this is the first time I've consciously modeled a character after someone I know, and it happens to be you. And I'm still not sure if he's completely happy or at peace with that decision, or flattered or whatever, or embarrassed, I don't know. But so only those two.
Oh, you can tell Jake that people donate mucho money to us for the chance to be immortalized like that in writers' books.
I will. I'll let him know.
Is he watching this right now?
I have no idea. He's supposed to be getting ready for school tomorrow. He's a freshman in college, so he's supposed to be preparing for class. I hope that's what he's doing. Okay. But he'll go on YouTube and watch it. He'll watch the rebroadcast.
Okay. So Petite Lisa says, what did Wash, did I pronounce that correctly? Wash? Is it Wash? What did Wash? Wash. Okay, choose Wash. Okay. I have problems with my V sound. So why did Wash choose Ben at the beginning? Why did Wash choose Ben at the beginning of the fifth wave? When he says, you will be my battlefield, why Ben?
The reader is seeing a scene that has been played out over and over and over. Ben doesn't know that, but this is a speech that Bosch has given nearly every single recruit. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. There's an obvious reason why he would give a speech like that to a traumatized young adult who thinks that life is over as he knows it or she knows it. So it's a speech, it's a well-rehearsed speech that's part of the plan. So Ben isn't special in any sort of way in terms of that speech. In my mind, Bosch has given that speech many, many, many times.
Okay. Right. There's a few remaining questions, all of them from Josie Reese, so we'll just try and get through them. She says, oh, and this one will be what the fans want to know. It says, can you give us a hint at what ship will be Endgame? The fandom is going crazy.
What will be the end game?
What she says, can you give us a hint at what ship will be Endgame? The fandom is going crazy.
Oh, the short answer to that is no, I won't give you a hint. You'll have to read.
Oh, yeah. So everyone is going to be like, oh man, he's not going to even give us a hint. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. The next question from Josie is, I am currently writing a novel, 13,000 words through. How do you keep writing? Are there some days when you just cannot write?
There are some days when I absolutely feel like I can't, and I tell myself I can't, but then whether you're getting paid for it or not, part of the way to finish a book is to treat it like it's a job instead of just some hobby you're indulging in, like, you know, building a model ship. Writing a book is very hard. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't. It does take a lot of time and effort and commitment, but mostly commitment. Books get written by those people who sit down and write even if they don't feel like writing, even if it's the last thing they feel like doing, they still do it. And that's what I would suggest, whether you feel like it or not. If you want to finish it, just sit down and do it.
Okay, so we're running out of time. So there's one last question we have to ask you. And so how can authors like yourself best support efforts to kick off social change to end violence against women?
Number one thing is just what we're doing now, is break the silence. If you know someone, deal with that situation. Use the platforms that you have without being preachy, without being scoldy. You know, you don't have to scold anyone or try to shame people, but use the platforms you have to add your light to the sum of light. You don't have to write books about the topic, but you do have to realize that you were given this unique opportunity, particularly if you're writing for young people, boys as well as girls, that through your writing and through your interaction, I have never consciously ever been mean to a fan, ignored a fan, done something to a fan that was intentionally meant to hurt their feelings. Show kindness and model kindness, and kindness will spread. I firmly believe that. And so as a writer, or anyone in the public eye, you know, show respect to others and model that respect for others, particularly young people who I know, you know, in a sense, you know, look up to me or see me, you know, as someone to admire.
Okay, so one final question from the audience, from Crafting Chaos. My last question, will you do another Q&A anytime soon? Big grin.
Oh, yes, there will be off and on. There'll be Q&As on Twitter. There'll be Q&As that are sponsored through Sony Pictures and through my publisher. And for diehard fans, you know, sometimes I just get it into my head to go on Twitter and start answering questions just out of the blue, sort of an impromptu Q&A. So I'll probably continue to do that. I'm doing a lot of traveling this fall. I'm going to several festivals that you can find about out on my website. So come and visit me if you live in the area. And even if you don't, get on a plane and come visit me. Make sure you check out my social media, my Twitter, my Facebook, my Instagram, and my website, because I always post updates on there. I try to be very good about that for Fifth Wave News and my travels, as well as information about projects like the Pixel Project.
Okay, so we've got a minute left, so I'm just gonna do a very quick run through of the slide to show you guys where to get the goodies that Rick's donated. So here's the slide. And as mentioned earlier, Rick has generously donated 2 grab bags that's stuffed with to the Indiegogo fundraiser that we're running, the Reaper Pickles Indiegogo fundraiser. There's a signed copy of the Fifth Wave, a signed bookmark, a bracelet, a signed 2-sided poster featuring the book covers of the Fifth Wave and the Infinite Sea, and a special note from one of the main characters in the Fifth Wave for your eyes only. And if you look at this slide on the screen, you can donate to get these goodies at is.gd/R4P Indiegogo 2015. And this is case sensitive. If you have only PayPal, no credit card, you can donate at R4P Resume 2015, and you can get a set of exclusive Reaper Pixels wallpapers for your laptop, tablet, and smartphone. And To find out more about Read for Pixels, go to is.gd/read4pixels. And to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, visit the Pixel Project's website at www.thepixelproject.net. And to find out more about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, please visit reveal.thepixelproject.net to learn more about it. And please donate generously to help us reveal pixels and raise the $1 million for the cause. And thank you all so much, and have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world. Rick, say bye. Bye, everybody.
It was great. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.